Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to one of our regular webinar sessions. As I was mentioning earlier on, we have sort of changed our priorities and tried in the meantime to create a lot more just-in-time and at-the-shoulder teaching opportunities and faculty development opportunities. And I'm very grateful that today, Dr. Lynne Postovit had agreed and was actually quite excited to facilitate a conversation around supporting graduate students and what does support look like and what strategies or how can we provide that kind of support. I'm lucky, we're all lucky to have her here with us, and I'm sure it seems a little bit formal, but it is quite informal. I'm sure you can see her space and her house and my house as well. And you all have the opportunity to unmute yourself and talk and discuss. So I'm sure we will have some active engagement as well. Anything else that I need to mention? There is also a Q&A session, but I don't see us perhaps using that. Like I said, you can simply unmute yourself and you all have the ability to engage that way. I also want to remind everyone that this session will be recorded and we will add it to our faculty development library, where we're adding all of the faculty development webinars as a resource for those people who are not able to participate or who want to go back and revisit something that was mentioned. I see some familiar names here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Claudiana Colomitro, and I'm the Director of Education Development with the Office of Professional Development Education Scholarship in Health Sciences. Other than that, I think I will turn the floor to you, Dr. Postovit, please.
Hi, everyone, and this is all very strange to me as well, and I'm hiding away in a bedroom that I hope is quiet enough. So my son's trying to learn school and my dog barks a lot. So I apologize if that happens. And I'm here today really to have a discussion with you about how we're all managing our graduate students and some of the concerns that they may be having, how to mentor graduate students remotely and to do that sort of effectively in sort of really short amounts of time and what's seeming like longer and longer amounts of time. And depending on what questions are, we can kind of open this up to, you know, depending on what stage your lab is in, you know, discussions of facing how to also support the additional support staff in, say, laboratories, like technicians and that type of thing. And so I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Lynne Postovit, and I'm the head of the Department of Biomedical and Molecular Sciences at Queen's University in the Faculty of Health Sciences, School of Medicine. And I'm also still an adjunct professor in oncology at the University of Alberta, where most of my laboratory actually is. So my laboratory is actually in a transition phase right now. And so I have, I guess, many years of experience in terms of training graduate students, as I see many of you have, across the spectrum, as well as postdoctoral fellows. And I think uniquely some perspectives on how to manage a fairly large research program from afar. So for example, from Kingston to Edmonton. And so interestingly, I'm actually sitting in Edmonton right now, and the lab folk that are here, we're actually, and the graduate students, communicating much the same way that we normally do. So just to get some hints in that way. And so oh, okay, perfect. So we can see where to focus. All right. So, okay, so it looks like uncertainty of the future, and then personal issues related to. So, okay, so it looks like uncertainty of the future, and then personal issues related to isolation and caregiving are the main topics to discuss. So that's just to help guide what I'm going to ramble on about with this. So I prepared just a two point PowerPoint on this, really to introduce the topics that I thought we could discuss. And then the second PowerPoint, which we can share with everybody, is just a list of resources that are Queen's specific, but I think that every university kind of has. So can everybody see my screen? Yes, no? Okay. So I'm sharing my screen. Okay, good. The screen can be seen. And I have to say this is super weird because I'm just talking to myself. And so the topics I thought that we would discuss are health and well-being, the finances of our students, and aspects such as visas. And in this, including both graduate students, some of whom are foreign graduate students and visiting ones, as well as our postdoctoral fellows. Mentorship. So what does mentorship mean in the time of COVID, when the ways that we normally interact with our graduate students have changed? Productivity and timelines, which is really around mentorship, as well as staying motivated, and different types of things that we can do remotely. And so I'll stop sharing now. And maybe I'll just describe some of the things that we have available at the universities for health and well-being, and then some ideas that we're using in our lab, and then we can maybe open it up for some discussion about that. So certainly Queen's University, and in the list of resources that we can distribute, as well as others, I think have recognized that the current situation is very strenuous for our students, and part of that is related to not knowing what the future will bring, but then also dealing with childcare, elder care, and just isolation in general. And so just to have everyone aware, probably on every faculty of graduate studies site, including our own, and then also in health services, there are links to access for mental health. And so one of the pieces of advice is to talk frequently with your trainees, see how they're doing, and be very open. I think group conversations are great, but there should be also opportunities for one-on-one conversations with them, where you can really get at how they're feeling, and have them open up and share with them the number of resources that are available. So Queen's University has resources centrally. The Faculty of Health Sciences, through the Department of Psychiatry, also has services that are available for physicians that are being opened up also to others within the departments as well. And so I certainly within DBMS sent that information around, but it's important to be aware and have easy access to that. And I think have continual conversations with trainees just to see how they're doing. If you notice any mood changes, withdrawal, nervousness, really just to try to get to that. And I will say that with me personally, the students I've known for years now, I can sense much easier, and they're much quicker to divulge if they're struggling a little bit. And one of the challenges I think is with newer students who we haven't maybe gotten to know quite as well yet, and maybe are more shy, and sometimes are often international students who are even more isolated than normal. So I thought I would open this up just as a discussion of if there are other things that people are doing to try to get at this and make sure our students are okay.
So I think what and I'm happy to see if you don't have to use the raise hands function, which you can here in Zoom, but if you would like to add to the conversation, make a comment, and add some more resources to what Lynne had just mentioned, please just unmute yourself, go ahead, or provide any comments or questions in relation to any of the points that were mentioned. I see. James, thanks for joining us as well.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just start it off by thanking you for doing this first. I think it's a great initiative to reach out to faculty members to actually check on how they're doing, but to support them in how they interact with their graduate students. We have on the, as Lynne alluded to, we have on the School of Graduate Studies main website, or on the COVID-19 link, link to a document on remote supervision and best practices that is there as a resource for you. Also, student wellness is open for business, and this is something that graduate students are becoming aware of, or not necessarily cognizant of the fact that student wellness will continue to support them remotely. They can't have the in-person meetings that they previously had, but they're still making appointments and counseling and supporting students, including graduate students. So you need to know, and your students need to know, that that is a resource that's still available to them.
Thank you. Oh, I see.
Work. I see Claudiana.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you, James. Lida, I see you. You have your hand up. You can just go ahead and, yeah.
I don't know what's going on. Anyway, what I was going to say is that even under the best conditions, many times it happens when for a long time the student tries to do something and the results are not as expected, or whatever. Now that they cannot even go to the lab to do the experiment and show what they want to show, so that they can finish their thesis, get the results, and graduate, this would be even more stressful. So I think now, just as Lynne said before, it's even more important to have contact with them and encourage them, and especially tell them what the results mean, because many times the results may be not as expected. So, okay, you sit down with the student and tell them what they mean, and especially to tell them that even if the result was not what you expected, it's still interesting, and you can still put it in your thesis, and, all is not lost, in other words, because you cannot even go to the lab now. So anyway, I mean, the students need support, graduate students, even under the best circumstances, but now it's even more important. That's all I want to say. No, I just see a black screen with my name on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Lida. That's a great point. Yeah.
And I think it segues really well into what seems to be the main concern, which is dealing with all of the uncertainty. And so whether we do qualitative research or bench research, I think we're all being affected, and questions of support through to time of completion for new graduate students, when and how to initiate programming, and then I'm going to read one of these comments here in a second. As well as what the job market's going to look like after this is all done. And I can say, as a department head, in the last week or so, I've been getting from senior postdoctoral fellows around the world many inquiries and CVs, which to me indicates that people and trainees, postdoctoral fellows, and our graduate students are likely very concerned about what that job market's going to look like, and are thinking of ways to be proactive in ways that they probably haven't necessarily always done in the past. And so basically what we do know is that COVID-19, if we're frank, isn't going to go away anytime soon. And this will allude to some comments that are here. For example, very likely that business will not be as usual in the fall. And it may be many months till the students can come back. And what do we do with, with our research programs? and that type of thing. And then also, how do we ensure we have communication when those sort of opportunistic meetings that we have because we're in the same place no longer occur. So I will say that COVID-19 is not going anywhere. It is very likely that our universities in Ontario, in Queens, for example, will not have on-campus undergraduate students in for the fall. However, the question of graduate students and laboratories is still, I think, open because there are possibilities for social distancing and for better controls and that type of thing. So the uncertainty is, I think we just simply do not know, and we need to be able to plan for both. The university and the way that we look at enrollment, and I think how these students want to move forward does depend on us trying to move forward. So enrolling our students and then maybe thinking about how we train them a little bit differently and reversing, say, timelines. So examples in my lab where I would normally start onboarding students right now and have them for the first year in the lab learning various techniques is instead being focused very much on intensive literature reviews, discussions about the state of the art in the area, development of experimental plans, discussions which they normally learn by trial and error of implementation of controls and that type of thing. Especially with those early on and also later on getting being cognizant that those opportunistic run-ins don't occur, setting times where you meet with them, and sometimes it's to discuss work and other times it can just be to discuss life. But I think scheduling those in and sticking to it is actually really important at this particular time. In terms of the programming, I think we all have to understand that if we have research programs, our PhD and master students may take longer to move through. And I understand, and perhaps James can speak in on this, that the university is well aware of this and likely the government as well. So notions that, the funding and expectations for a master's would say be 2 years and a PhD would be 4. I think will have to be loosened somewhat. For our programs where we have more course-based work, so sort of pattern tune type things, giving the students the best education possible. And I think the key to what we're talking about in our department is really flexibility and treating each student and trainee as an individual. So some students that are, say, computational may be able to continue on with their work, and others that have more bench work may have to have what they do accommodated in different ways. So in terms of the job market, I think the answer is we just don't know. I think I'm hoping that when this is done, there'll be a even greater appreciation for what it is that we do in the medical sciences, but truly we don't know. We don't know what the health of our academic institutions will be once this is done in terms of hiring our postdocs. So we have to just really do a great job of communicating with them now and supporting them as best as we can, understanding that it's a lot of unknowns for all of us. So I wish I had concrete answers, but I think we should probably open it up for discussion and what other people are doing to work with this and this uncertainty.
You did have some really good suggestions though, Lynne, because I heard things like how in terms of the research, you're inviting them to do intensive lit review and look into discussion of the state of the art. So you're trying to find alternative assignments that are perhaps as meaningful and rigorous as they could be when they are collecting the data for their own research. So what are those alternatives? And I also appreciate it, and it resonated with me, the one size doesn't fit all. So treating each student as an individual in terms of their specific needs, their specific aspirations, or their specific challenges, what they're facing. Other people will jump in because I know you asked about strategies. What are others doing? I was curious personally to hear a little bit more about productivity and what does it look like now what should it look like for graduate students?
This is gonna, again, be extremely flexible and individual, and I think also depends on the type of lab program that one has. So what we are doing, as an example, in my lab, and I'll put it into context, we are a fairly well, we're a larger lab, we're very well established, and have a lot of programs going. So we always have our group meetings, and I will say one of the themes that I was probably will run through everyone is that we have to start thinking of working collectively and not as individuals. So in our lab, we have a lot of manuscripts that are going on right now. So what I've done is actually paired earlier graduate students onto projects that are developed, that need revisions, maybe need to be written in some way. And so they're actually participating in the writing process. So they'll gain some authorship, they'll learn how to write a paper, how to assemble the figures, and that type of thing. We use our group meetings to go through our reviews and to criticize each other, and then so different people can add in various types of components into that. So we're able to kind of ensure the productivity of our newer people by allowing that to occur, and the students who are farther along, for example, PhD students who are expected to finish in the next year are now intensively writing their introductions, and getting those figures and everything to the point of perfection. So we're hoping we'll be able to start onboarding people, maybe in the labs at least in the summer, and then into the fall, perhaps in a staggered way, but in the interim, really getting all of that written stuff done.
That's great. Thank you.
Hi, Lynne, it's James. Is it all right if I jump in and add this conversation? So I'll talk a little bit about my own research program and what I'm doing with my students, but then I want to go back to some of your bigger picture questions. In my case, all of our research is done remotely, and which means that my students have to travel to where our research sites are. And currently, one of the larger projects is with a cluster of Indigenous communities across Canada. So as you can imagine, that's completely halted. At least the in-person visits to those communities is off for the foreseeable future, and probably going to be one of the last sites to be reactivated. In the interim, the students are working on other aspects of their programming. One PhD student about to go in for a comprehensive exam, another one who's a master's student who wants to stay for a PhD. So instead of doing the primary data collection, she's actually working on the proposal for promotion to the PhD, and we'll get that done. But I've also actually got them involved in writing applications, because we're having to write proposals on this work to various agencies. And so the students have become key members of the writing team. And I think they're learning quite a lot about how to structure a research program, or how it's structured, how it's put together. It's going to, it actually gives them a deeper understanding of what we're doing. I think will improve their own understanding of their data once it begins to flow again. So when it comes to onboarding, my habit, like a lot of people, is to hire an incoming student as a summer research assistant to get them integrated into the research program. And so I've continued to do that, but engage those students in different ways, and to use their talents and the experience that they come with to contribute to the planning. And I'm actually been quite impressed with how we actually are still able to move things forward, just by thinking about different activities, different ways that the students can advance both their own programs and their professional development during this period where they can't be engaged in primary data collection. So a couple of things, and I totally understand, and I think we all appreciate, uncertainty is probably the biggest enemy at this point. Research is an essential activity even under the Emergency Act of the province. and it's certainly a high priority at Queen's. And I know that there is discussion and planning about how we are going to reactivate the research enterprise at Queen's University. So we have no details to share at this point in time, but people need to know that this is being discussed and that there is planning going on to re-engage research, but also our students who we understand are at risk. Some of them would have finished before the end of this summer and now are wondering if that's going to happen. We are actually thinking about those students and what our response as an institution needs to be to support those students who find themselves in that situation through a circumstance of which they have absolutely no control. So it's, I guess at this point, it's an assurance or hopefully a reassurance that these are issues that are being thought about on a daily basis. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be common across various universities. I know University of Alberta, for example, with and this all has to kind of go through dean's approvals, and there have to be ways to ensure the public health regulations are met. So, you know, physical distancing, etc. But opening up to students who have strict timelines, to allow revisions, for example, of manuscripts and revisions needed for grants. So I think different universities, as in consultation with public health and as the leadership comes through, will be coming up with plans to allow this to occur, but it takes time. And I think as PIs and lab leaders also being cognizant of, even if that is the case, that there are still obligations that our trainees, as we ourselves have, in terms of taking care of children and elders, of you know, having health issues that would preclude them from being out and about. So the name of our game, and at least in my group, and what I tell people, is truly accommodation, flexibility, helping each other as much as possible, and sometimes in some ways changing the way that we do things and how we think about things. So an advantage of being an academic is our job is really to fully understand, acquire knowledge, apply it, and then create it. And so we can spend a lot of time in the acquisition and refinement of that knowledge right now that sometimes gets forgotten until the very end of a program. And maybe it's not such a bad thing to bring it on a little bit earlier for some of our students. Any comments? Or there's some great ideas about what people are doing with their students using Skype and Teams. Also not having everything be work related, but some of those fun aspects that we all like to bring into our labs. I know some people are exercising together, so I've heard that. I'm not coordinated enough to be seen on a screen exercising, but I think, you know, I've heard of research groups doing that as well, which is kind of cool, and having health challenges.
I don't know. I had raised my hand. Does it work? I don't know. I just have a black screen.
Oh, we can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, you can. Oh, nice. I was just thinking, to speed, I mean, all of that is okay, but lots of the work, the real work, cannot be done. I mean, cannot grow cells at home or anything like that. So the way to be able to go back to the lab is simply to have everybody tested. If everybody in Potterville, for example, I'm saying that because this is being done in whatever happened in Europe, you see, about 2 weeks ago is coming to Canada. And what they do is they test everybody in a building, for example. And for example, my daughter is an opera singer in Germany. Opera, of course, is face-to-face, but even to go and practice in these rooms and all of that, everybody has been tested, and it's been discussed to have like a health passport, they call it. a little booklet that says, okay, you were tested and you were okay back then by such and such test and all of that. And then they are allowed to go to the building and, do all of these preparations. Something like that, if we had something like that for Botterill, for example, then the students would be able to go back to the lab and work normally. Of course, that's the only way. Now, this cannot be done for large classes of undergraduates that may be coming from all over the globe. So I'm not saying for undergraduates, but for graduate students, for research to keep going, that would be a way that should work. Now, of course, this is even more load on the testing facilities. And we may be able to help them, but this, I don't know how it's going to happen. But if we are tested, in other words, and we have a little passport saying that it's okay to be outside, we have to be a little bit like puppies. You have your passport, and then you can go to the US. In this case, you can enter Botterill with your passport, or you can get out of your house with a passport. If you don't, you just stay put. So anyway, that's...
And I'm sure, from a public health perspective, this has to be a part of the strategy for opening up things bit by bit. So, and it's certainly been discussed, but I haven't heard anything from Central yet in terms of the plans and the rolling out of opening things up, except that they are most definitely working on a strategy to very carefully start to open up research. And as James alluded to, research is still considered an essential activity. It's really doing it in a measured way that's safe, and the safety of everyone is, I think, at the top. So, and I also want to add, it's trying to place into perspective that as we're making sure that we're taking care of the finances of our students, so their stipends are still paid, they can now begin to access the government. For example, just the other day has released funds that they can access to compensate for sort of lack of income that they may otherwise get. And we have allowances and accommodations for programs that might take a little bit longer, is to really realize that this is a historic, unprecedented blip. But this is possible for them within this context. So it's tough. Are there any other comments or things that people want to talk about? Two students who are on sort of international scholarship from Brazil, from Saudi, and we're working timelines that are attached with this. Each country seems to be doing things a little bit differently in terms of that. And I find those students are a little more stressed than the others because they're alone, away from their families in general. So the strategies for that is I've had committee meetings for them and had the committee agree upon what would be acceptable for their thesis, and so that it's very, very clear, and setting out clear short-term to fulfill, with the idea that as things open up, they are going to be prioritized to get into the lab and actually complete, because they'll have a tight timeline on the time that they can spend here. So, I mean, I think right now they can't even leave. So it adds to the stress and anxiety. So I don't know if other people have international students that they're working with as well.
And like you said, Lynne, there are really some good strategies. I'm just reading, and I'm a bit behind, but I was just reading about the fun photo of the week.
Yeah, that's great.
That one, what a good idea to highlight wellness.
It's for wellness, and it's pointed that with these electronic modalities, and I mean, I suffer this all the time with you know, transcontinental lab meetings. It's easy for people to turn off their video and turn off their microphone and completely tune out. And so how do we with these types of modalities ensure engagement? And for me, that's, you know, reaching out personally, noticing that people aren't being responsive, and coaching them or coaxing them, and then these fun elements, right? So yeah.
That's exciting. What other strategies are people using? Laura or
baking bread seems to be a thing on the internet. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good comment, David, because sometimes we forget, and we just when we're typing up strategies, we tend to send them in private. So choosing all panelists, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yes. I think too, and I was trying to kind of meander there, the way that our research programs are run is also unique and different to all of us. So again, not a one size fits all. And I think that newer laboratories will be operating differently than more established ones. So as I said, I can redistribute manuscripts and it's a matter of having the lead author acknowledge that it's very important as a group that we bring in these students and get them motivated and learn. It's usually something attached to what their project's going to be. But newer labs maybe don't have these types of options, and so you have to think of other ways to get engagement and that type of thing. So it could be review writing or whatever it is, but yeah. So yeah, I have first year PhD students that are learning full out how to do, you know, that with people who've moved on to other jobs, how to do a whole manuscript and find all the data and reconstruct figures and that type of thing. So they're getting that experience, but maybe we're fortunate or unfortunate enough to have these lingering projects for them to work on. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to flip to the PowerPoint slide I have with some of the resources that we can just reach out to. And let me see if I can not screw this up. Okay. So, oops. Oh, this is good enough. I think you can all see it. So basically, I have my email. So if anyone wants to reach out at all, please do. I'm always happy to discuss issues. I didn't get into it here, but you know how to manage personnel as well. As we know, the funding for laboratories is going to probably be an issue in the next little while. So decision-making matrix, I think we always have to preserve the salaries of our students and our postdocs. And so, you know, if you need to discuss how to make decisions about other research staff that aren't currently working, technicians and that type of thing, I'm always open to that. So the availability of federal aid, if that's needed, if it comes to needing a to be laid off for a while, or so that funds can be conserved to protect the other aspects of the laboratory, or even working with others to find other work for people. I've also have a link for the Faculty of Grad Studies, and the first thing that you're going to see on that is the COVID-19 response that's there that has a number of links. The Queen's Student Wellness and Health Services. So as was alluded to, this is all still open for business for our students. In addition, in the Faculty of Health Sciences, we're really lucky to have the Department of Psychiatry and the work that they're doing for supporting the faculty, and that the head of psychiatry has told me that he will do his very best working with Queen's to also accommodate our students and trainees, and I've sent that around in the department as well. And then the bottom is just a link to some of the financial supports that have just been made available to our students. So, you know, I think I'm cognizant of the fact that some of our students do supplement their income. We certainly will be moving forward with a different looking type of program in the fall. So a remote curriculum for our undergraduate students, and so those TA-ships and that type of thing will still be available for these students. So we're not shutting down, we're just changing the way that we're doing things. So just to perhaps allay concerns to the students about the types of TA-ships that we will still be offering them. We are still going to have programming, and as long as we can keep students enrolled in our online programs, we'll have plenty of work for them as we're in some ways even asking for their assistance to help us with onboarding different types of technologies and that type of thing. Okay.
Lots of resources available, and thank you for making yourself available as well, Lynne, so that everyone here can actually follow up with you, and other people, once they listen to the recording, they can reach out and see what kind of supports are available. And you heard other supports from James as well, from the School of Graduate Studies, in terms of what they're providing to graduate students, and the flexibility that's there.
Yes, and lots of talking, I guess, with each other, because I think the thing that will be weighing on almost all of us more and more is that number one concern, which is just the sheer uncertainty of everything. We don't know. I mean, we don't know when this is going to start to even like lighten up in terms of the working from home and that type of thing. And so, yeah, lots of accommodation, flexibility, and you know, as directors of the labs or PIs or the mentors, I use a lot of decision trees ahead of having to make the decisions. And so, you know, if it comes to the fact that we you know, won't be allowed into the lab until September, what types of things do you do? And so if the student is in their first year, do you have them write a comprehensive review? Do you have them finish up papers that are in the lab, that type of thing? And thinking ahead of the different possibilities sometimes helps not being reflexive, so you can help navigate better decision making, I guess. So, and the students will be okay. I think we're all going to be fine, and I'm confident that the school and we as colleagues will make sure that they're taken care of financially, and in terms of emotionally, just reach out as much as you can. So, and some of them you're going to have to make them, I think. I actually find, unfortunately, some of the people who need the most attention and help are the ones that are least likely to reach out to you, and may even be the ones that miss those regular Skypes or WhatsApps, or I don't know. I think I'm using 4 modalities right now. There's WhatsApp and Google and Zoom and Skype. So, and they all like a different one, but. Good.
Thank you so much. I mean, that's a lot of that's a lot of strategies. That's a lot of opportunities and sort of helping us rethink and reimagine how we could do things differently. And I personally found that very useful. And just looking at some of the contributions here, I know others did too. We typically schedule this conversations, webinars, talks for an hour just to be on the safe side, but we do have a few more minutes if there are any, what questions or what comments would people have? And feel free to unmute yourself, or I find this group likes the chat more, or use the chat box.
So maybe while if you're waiting or people are wondering what questions or looking for questions, maybe I can just add a couple of other things. You know, we of course track applications and acceptances for graduate students. It's one of great interest. Interestingly enough, compared to where we were last year, we're actually ahead when it comes to application or offers and acceptances to graduate programs across the university, including in the Faculty of Health Sciences. So in the normal course of things, we'd actually expect to have to actually meet all of our recruitment targets come September for graduate students in our various research programs. And another interesting thing that people should be aware of, you know, in times of economic uncertainty and downturn, interest in post-secondary education tends to skyrocket. So it would not be surprising if over the next year or so, there's increasing interest in our graduate programs and more inquiries from individuals wanting to come back for a graduate degree. So I guess the message there is as Lynne already said, we are going to come out of this. What we're going to look like, what the institution is going to look like when we come out of it, that has some uncertainty around it, but just from everything that I've seen and experienced, I expect that Queen's will come out of this again as a strong and thriving institution that offers a unique experience to its students. So it's you know, I mean, it's hard to appreciate. We've only been in this, well, it's been 6 weeks since our world got turned upside down. And it's going to take us longer than that, obviously, to come out of it. But all the signs are that that we will, and we will come out of it as an institution that offers a great education and experience to its students, and will continue to do so in the future.
So I'll just echo that. And I think that we will probably see even surges in this type of thing. And there's one question about the writing and whether instruction is formal or not. And again, in my experience, this is a individual student basis. So some students I have had do formal courses, and these types of things will still be available. They're certainly available through everything from ESL to different services at the university for learning how to write in general. In terms of scientific writing, I work with all of my students initially one-on-one, and how to write concisely, how to do plan, what needs to go into a manuscript, etc. And then we have a form of group mentorship. So all of our manuscripts, we actually, in the research team, group edit. And so we do a first draft and a first pass, then everybody reads it, and then we'll dedicate an entire lab meeting to going over, for over 2 hours on how the text is reading, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and that type of thing. So these aren't the structural components like grammar, but they are the scientific writing and clarity. So I think it's probably different with each individual student. Some students need to just get better at writing in general. And that is a lot of workshopping initially. But I think that our individual styles and the type of research that we do all require sort of specific mentorship and instruction. Yeah, we spend a lot of time in my lab on writing because I think in terms of what we do, regardless of the research, our communication and the written form as well as our presentation forms are some of the most important, our important skills. And so we spend tons of time on the writing, how to do that properly, how to present articulately, with, like I'm not right now, articulately. Is that a word? And then also, yeah, good presentation skills and clarity. So in addition to scientific method. And we're doing fun things right now too, where people are actually planning their experiments out much better because they've got more time than they would. So tricks that we learn as we're going along in our training of how to construct an experiment to be able to ask more than one question cleverly, and how to really not see controls as the annoying thing your supervisor's asking for, but as an incredible tool to give insight into what the meaning of your results are. So they're spending more time doing that, which I hope that once they get going will actually allow them to be more efficient in the laboratory. So things that maybe we used to learn with trial and error can be changed to learn with theory. Good. I don't have anything more to say unless anyone has questions or.
And I don't see any more questions. So why don't we leave it at that? And like you already provided your email, so I'm sure some of the people here will get in touch. So thank you again for making yourself available, and thank you so much, Dr. Postovit. I mean, it was really helpful to hear how you are addressing and how you're changing some of the routine and creating a new routine, so to speak, with your research team in your lab, but also with the department as well. And at the institutional level, we got to hear some strategies and some things that are being done there to support graduate students. So I think that's wonderful. And then just trying to add to those resources and trying to provide that one-on-one support, as you highlighted right from the get-go, that it's great to have those group conversations and group support, but also reaching out to the individual and identifying what are the individual needs.
And I will add that the department is having open forum for students. So the other important aspect institutionally is, as in the department, as we're making decisions to help facilitate and help the students, we are engaging them in feedback to make sure that what we think they need is actually what they need. And that the decisions that we're making suit their programs well as well. And I will say, in one aspect of our department, the student feedback allowed us to actually change the plan that we were going to unfold to be far more adaptive. We were trying to make it easy for them, and it turned out they wanted to have more choice. So listening to them is really important. So yeah, ask them what they need.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thanks again. Thank you everyone for joining. The upcoming webinars are on May 5th on preparing your teaching dossier, and the other one that we have scheduled is on May 8th regarding optimizing clinical teaching. So keep an eye out for those two.